Good evening, ladies and gentlemen out there in YouTube land. I am Deleted Scenes, human being, American, and YouTube Ronin. And I would like to welcome you to tonight's episode of Live from Sparkwood in 21. This series chronicles the cult classic television series Twin Peaks, created by David Lynch and Mark Frost. There's been a lot of multimedia surrounding the series, fan films, books, and even a video game. And we are going to be discussing one of the books tonight, Mark Frost's Secret History of Twin Peaks. Joining me on this journey are Superfans Last Call, Troy Pacelli.
Hello, hello.
Netters Network.
Good evening.
And Aged Boomer.
Hello. Maybe that's gotten old at this point. I don't know.
No, actually, I think that's a nice callback.
I want to say hello to everyone currently joining us in the chat, including those of you on X. I can't see you, but I know that you're there. Channel member JPRPH1. FKHC 2005, sometimes known as Tim. Host of Films with Friends, the creator of the 10-Word Review, Big Al Presents. And we'll be joining Al this Friday night for Films with Friends, and we will be watching The Black Hole from 1979. All right. Faithful Blue Wrench channel member, the Bird Woman of YouTube, Connie Cleary. Daniel Berry's Sports Highlights. Rio Nation Gaming Clips. DJ Play Nice. All right. And Mel NYC Reviews. Good to see you. All right. Well, let's get right down to it. This is actually a book that Troy made me aware of.
You hadn't known about it before that?
It's all your fault.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen season 3. So at that time, and so I tried to stay away from anything Twin Peaks related. And Troy was saying that after I watched season 3, there were 2 books that I needed to read, and that was the final dossier, and of course the book we're going to be discussing tonight. And I am part of the way into it. I've listened to the first couple of hours of the Audible edition, and it does not start in the place I was expecting it to start. It does actually go not just into kind of the fictional history of the show, but actual real life history that you can look up and go into. So I thought it was very interesting. So, Troy, you're the subject matter expert for this evening, so I'm going to let you just jump right in.
So I may have kind of oversold the wait to read the books until after season 3 portion of it. We were talking a little bit backstage about spoilers, and I'm like, I realized that there's only one big spoiler, which I'll mention early in my talk about this. But there is not a lot, especially in the secret history. The secret history is 10 hours of audio, unabridged. And it doesn't really spoil anything for season 3. It was released before season 3. And then the final dossier actually came out after season 3, which kind of does have a bit of a spoiler for season 3. So that one you definitely want to wait until after you've seen season 3 to see the final dossier. But let me jump into this. So, Secret History of Twin Peaks is organized as a dossier with annotations by Special Agent, in quotes, TP, close quotes, who has been assigned by Deputy Director Gordon Cole to discover the identity of the person who compiled the dossier, referred to as the archivist. The dossier contains documents pertaining to the town of Twin Peaks and its inhabitants, particularly Douglas Milford. Milford was the town drunkard until he drifted away from Twin Peaks and eventually joined the Air Force. During this time in the Air Force, he ended up in Roswell, New Mexico, where he was present, for the alleged UFO crash. Following this incident, he was assigned to investigations pertaining to UFO sightings and was eventually put on Project Blue Book. The archivist revealed his identity as Major Briggs, who Milford handpicked as his successor. The dossier ended with a Mayday message from Briggs on March 28, 1989, and Agent TP sent her findings to her superiors, signing her name as Tamara Preston. So, at this point, I should note that the Secret History of Twin Peaks was written and released prior to season 3, which also predated the final dossier. As such, our deep dive into the final dossier kind of spoils one of the central mysteries of the Secret History of Twin Peaks, that being the identity of Garland Briggs as the archivist. However, this is also spoiled by season 2, so I'm not too worried, for our own sake. The Secret History also introduces us to Tamara Preston as the agent assigned by Gordon Cole to review the dossier, setting her up in her role as Biggs' successor as the archivist. But again, that was all, you knew all that from this by the time we were done with season 3. So I don't feel like we're really spoiling anything at this point. Before I get to the narrative synopsis, I want to touch on some elements that are kind of Easter eggy, only working in the visual medium. Using 3D glasses on certain illustrations of the book reveal interesting details with, as Dr. Jacoby says in the book, red suppressing the logical and blue suppressing the intuitive. Now, these are bullet pointed. On a picture of an owl, red shows the face of a stereotypical alien, like a gray, while blue only shows the owl. On another picture of an owl, red shows the Freemasons' all-seeing eye, the great sign, within the representation of the fifth triangular number figure instead of a common triangle. Blue shows only an owl, the representation of the Illuminati. On the cover of Jacoby's book, The Eye of God, red removes the subtitle, Sacred Psychology in the Aboriginal Mind, and the brand logo, leaving only the title followed by Dr. Lawrence Jacoby's name, and also simplifies the cover picture to a dot inside of a square inside of another square. Blue changes nothing. The preface of Jacoby's book, red removes the name of those given as favorable reviews of the book and half of Jacoby's picture. Blue removes the other half of Jacoby's picture. On the picture of Leland and Bob, red removes Bob. Blue changes nothing. On Norma's postcard to her parents, red obscures but does not completely eliminate all of her text, including the name and address of her parents, Lindstrom rather than Blackburn, and part of the anachronistic First Man on the Moon stamp. Blue eliminates the postcard label and lines, though not completely the stamp or postmark. These things that I'm covering are items that I'll talk about, later as we get to these points. Red removes the marginal notes for TP, Tamara Preston, including her verification of facts and the further conclusions she draws, as well as her indications as her identification as Tamara Preston. Now, I should note that is probably the most important part of Tamara's notes. It really does help if you're getting, because you're going to get into it and you're going to get kind of like, wow, what is fiction? What is real? She comments on the things that are real world. And, you know, obviously she's the reader's insert. So the things that she doesn't know about are all the things that are fiction, you know, all the things she's learning and so on and so forth. But I'll tell you, as you go check out the real, well, we'll get into that. Secret Messages and Oddities. On the picture of the Bookhouse Boy's favorite books, numbered from 1 to 11 by the archivist, using an I instead of a 1. Like everywhere else, he typed this number in his sections of the dossier. The archivist also notes on this page that, in quotes, good literature is a mirror through which we see ourselves more clearly, close quote. If one holds this picture in front of a mirror, the only numbers which are not changed are 1, 8, and 11, or I8 and II. And by taking the first word of each book title, we have Fear the Double. If we were using the number 1 written as a 1, then only 8 would have been reflected. This means that the archivist might have been aware of what happened to Cooper. Point 1. Milford's Buick receipt was, and I'll get to that later in tonight's presentation, was probably typed with the archivist typewriter, as indicated lack of the number 1, which is replaced by an I. Look, anyone who's ever used a typewriter knows that old, analog typewriters didn't have a 1 button because you could use an I in place of 1. So this is not a big secret, but it's useful in this circumstance. It might be indicated that Milford is not the man in black driving a black Buick sedan in the 1940s. To support that, Milford states in his diary after his visit to a military facility by Nixon that his car was parked next to a black sedan. Furthermore, this receipt is not validated by one of Tamara's verifications. The Ghostwood bill of sale was similarly likely forged by the archivist. It might be to indicate that Ghostwood was not actually sold. Furthermore, this document is not validated by Tamara Preston's validations. And finally, Agent Preston doesn't end at least one of her annotations with TP. Annotation numbers 2 of section 7 of notable families. This note is the one detailing what happened to Catherine and the mill after the bank explosion. Okay. The narrative of the secret diary, of course, starts out with Cole assigning review of the dossier to TP, whom we already know is Tamara Preston from the final dossier and from season 3. Again, voiced by the late Annie Wershing in the audio version. After Agent Preston describes the appearance and condition of the dossier in very clinical detail, there does seem to be a similarity between the way she describes things and the way Dale Cooper describes things in the first season, of Twin Peaks. And then method and circumstance of its discovery, we begin to examine the contents. It begins with an excerpt from the journal of Captain Meriwether Lewis on a secret expedition called The Corps of Discovery Across the Louisiana Purchase. on orders from President Jefferson. On September 25, 1805, Lewis wrote to Jefferson a letter in which he described a meeting with the Nez Perce chief, Twisted Hair, who provided him with a strange ring, yes, that ring, and a map of the area, later known as Glastonbury Grove. Lewis informed the president of his intention to explore the area charted in the map. Following Lewis's death, Jefferson was informed by Major James Neely, who stated his death had been suicide. However, in the following weeks, he received a letter from Major Gilbert Russell, who described the death as murder. Despite this, another letter from Russell, dated 2 years after, and possibly forged, describes Lewis as having been deranged and that he had attempted suicide multiple times prior to his death. This letter cemented Jefferson's opinion that Lewis committed suicide. There is a dichotomy between the real history and the fictional narrative that includes The Ring, a conspiracy against Lewis and Jefferson by agents of the Illuminati, and how all of these relate to the Twin Peaks narrative. This whole historical account of Lewis and Clark's expedition serves as a framework for the introduction of every kind of Freemason and Illuminati conspiracy theory you can think of. Secret History spends a lot of time on these elements, and there is enough rabbit holes on the internet for you to go down if you want to dig into all of that. I would definitely recommend a channel called the Y Files. They have whole videos on the Illuminati and Freemasonry and a lot of the other topics we're about to get
Crab
into.
cat.
And the Crab Cat and Mel's Hole and all of that. Yes. It also ties the Indian history of the environs of Twin Peak to the background and a number of things that Hawks says in the original series, including the nature of the black and white lodges, owls, sky spirits, dweller on the threshold, etc. There is a lot here, and I could never adequately summarize all of it. I should also point out that the Secret History draws a lot from real-world history and weaves it into the fictional Twin Peaks lore in such a way as to make it very difficult to know where one end and the other begins. It's kind of brilliant, and it will cause you to want to research the real history of the figures mentioned. It's also shocking how much of it is actually true and not, in fact, a contrivance of the fictional narrative, although there are some that I will point out as we go. And again, it's to know one from the other, it really helps to have Agent Preston's, linear notes. I further have to note that there's a clash, that this clash between the Illuminati and the Freemasons sounds way too plausible in light of real-world history we've been witnessing in the past decade or so. The postulation that the Illuminati are scheming, enlightenment-based group seeking esoteric knowledge, power, and single-world government, while the Freemasons are libertarians struggling to preserve freedom. Before continuing with the history of Twin Peaks itself, Briggs verbalizes an interesting and recurring theme. Quote, "It is impossible to distinguish between mysteries and secrets. Mysteries precede humankind, envelop us and draw us forward into exploration and wonder. Secrets and the work of humankind, a covert and often insidious way to gather, withhold, or to oppose power. Do not confuse the pursuit of one with the manipulation of the other." End quote. He then goes on to report the account of Wayan Chance and his traveling companion, Denver Bob Hobbs, two prospectors whose search for gold led to Owl Cave in 1879. They discovered the petroglyphs and were scared out by an owl. The morning after exploring the cave, Hobbs disappeared, leaving behind all of his belongings. Chance was never heard from again, but his journal was discovered in Spokane's Masonic Temple. A news article editorializes the deforestation of the logging industry moving into the area. The article is clearly from a conservationist slant, but focuses on the industry in Twin Peaks with the narrative about two logging companies on either side of the river, the Packards and the Martells. The Martell Mill was founded by Zebulon, that's a great name, Zebulon Martell in the late 1800s. 3 years later, the Packard sawmill was founded and eventually eclipsed the success of the Martell Mill. By January of 1902, the competing Packard and Martell sawmills had deforested much of the region's hills. In the frenzied drive to outperform one another, the two mills caused a log jam that stretched 7 miles to Whitetail Falls and rendered traffic on the river impassable. The blockade persisted for 2 weeks until, on the night of February 24, 1902, the logjam caught fire and soon spread ashore. The resulting blaze lasted 8 days, destroying 30% of the structures in the foundering town, killing livestock, and taking the lives of 6 residents before it was extinguished by the rain. 2 more residents expired due to complications in the following days, bringing the death toll to 8. It is unclear what started the fire, but according to a report in the contemporary newspaper, possibly the Spokane Spokesman Review, most attributed the fire to a lightning strike by a passing storm. Others claimed it to have been a curse laid by a displaced Native American medicine man, possibly an allusion to some of the history that's discussed earlier in the narrative, while still others claimed they had witnessed, in quotes, columns of fire, close quotes, descending from the sky. At the age of 16 in 1927, Andrew Packard was a Scout First Class in the Boy Scouts of America. In May, he and fellow Scouts Rusty and Theo set out to earn a hiking merit badge whilst supervised by Scoutmaster Dwayne Milford. Upon reaching Glastonbury Grove, Rusty and Theo became lightheaded as dark clouds approached the area. Preparing for a storm, Milford led the boys back to their camp. The storm lasted for several hours, during which Packard went to retrieve knee-high orange sodas Milford had brought for them, and saw lightning strike a nearby Douglas fir. In the flash of lightning, he spotted an extremely tall man looking at him, then vanish into the woods. Initially thinking the man must have been a lumberjack, he returned to camp with the sodas and told the scouts of the man he saw. I'm going to take a drink, not knee-high. Throughout the night, Packard heard thudding outside of the tent until he managed to fall asleep. In the morning, Milford found a large footprint and told Packard of the camping trip his brother Douglas went on 6 months prior, where he claimed to have seen a giant walking owl. In 1933, Zebulon Martell sold the family's acreage and the timber rights to Thomas Packard, ultimately leading to the mill's closure in 1939. By 1947, Andrew Packard was a scoutmaster and was also involved in several organizations in Twin Peaks, including the Rotary Club, the Rotary, Chamber of Commerce, Optimist Club, Elk Lodge, and the Masonic Lodge. In 1948, Andrew Packard took control of the Packard sawmill. Backing up slightly to 1927 again, the archivist recounts the history of Andrew's scoutmaster, Dwayne Milford, who had an ongoing feud with his brother, which had been sparked by an event concerning, quote, an old flame and a rumble seat, close quote. He also worked at the pharmacy owned by his family, which he took over after World War II following the death of his father. Milford was married for about 50 years until his wife's death. The marriage produced at least one child, Dwayne Milford Jr. He became mayor of the town of Twin Peaks in 1962 after running unopposed. A devoted Democrat, Dwayne took profound offense to an article his brother published in the Twin Peaks Post in support of disgraced ex-president Richard Nixon. This led to a prolonged series of articles from Doug critiquing Dwayne's mayoral actions. We now change focus to Dwayne's brother, Douglas Milford. Like Dwayne, Douglas joined the Twin Peaks chapter of the Boy Scouts of America and was, again, like his brother, a scoutmaster for a time. During a camping trip at Pearl Lakes in 1927, he claimed, he claimed to have seen a giant as well as a walking owl. He stated that he had photographed both, but when the film ended up prematurely exposed, he blamed his brother for improperly mixing chemicals in the family pharmacy's darkroom. Despite this, Milford had a photographic memory that his brother could attest to. The following month, Milford demanded an investigation into the incident from the Regional Scoutmaster Council in Spokane, lest he bring it to the attention of the National Scoutmaster Council. His brother tried to calm him down, only for Douglas to become violent, resulting in him getting forcibly removed from the meeting. He subsequently was asked to resign from the Scouts and began, in quotes, living in sin, close quotes, with Pauline Coyo, the estranged daughter of Twin Peaks Gazette owner Dayton Coyo. He became the town drunk until becoming a drifter in 1929, leaving Twin Peaks at the onset of the Great Depression. Dougie eventually reached San Francisco and worked as a logger. He enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Corps on December 10th, 1941, the day after the attack on Pearl Harbor. During wartime, he was a quartermaster. He was in the Quartermaster's Brigade. He was stationed in Guam and was promoted to sergeant by November of 44, when he was charged with black market trafficking of Army liquor and cigarettes. Despite the charges being dropped, he was demoted to private and was stationed at the Alamogordo, New Mexico White Sands Missile Range in 1945. By 1947, he was a corporal and had been transferred to the air base in Roswell, New Mexico. On the morning of July 5th, he heard rumors that an air crash had occurred that morning and snuck away from his post to see the wreckage 35 miles away. There he saw a large field of metallic debris. In the field, he saw military personnel extracting a large plane-like craft from the wreckage to be loaded onto a truck, and others loading smaller objects into ambulances. He then saw General Nathan F. Twining arriving at the field to investigate, but shortly after, Milford was arrested by military police. He was interviewed about the incident on July 8 by an Army lieutenant, though eventually requested to speak to the lieutenant's superior officer to discuss a similar experience he had previously had. Following this incident, Colonel Milford was promoted to the grade of major and was assigned to Project Sign. That's SIGN, Sign, by the United States. And that's a real project you can look up and the real world, by the United States Air Force, with General Twining as his commander. On July 12th, he and FBI agent Frederick Nathan interviewed Kenneth Arnold, who claimed to have seen UFOs on June 24th. On July 14th, Milford flew to Seattle and purchased a black 1947 Buick Roadmaster from Bob J. Hart. Subsequent alleged sightings of a man in black driving a Buick Roadmaster have been suggested to have been Milford. Following the September 4 sighting by Eisner Jennings of Twin Peaks, Milford traveled to the town to speak to Jennings on September 7th, ostensibly as a friend to Eisner's son, Emil, rather than as an Air Force officer. And I'll come back to go into more detail on Jennings later. After hearing Jennings' account, Milford advised him of the potential dangers of continuing to tell his story, citing Kenneth Arnold's plane being sabotaged. When Jennings went pale and quiet upon hearing this, Milford took it as a sign that he had succeeded. The following day, Milford traveled to the site where Jennings claimed to have seen the UFO and was greeted by a vision of an area in Ghostwood National Forest near Pearl Lakes. He ventured to this location where he claimed to have heard a hum, followed by bright multicolored lights, all coming from a large round object 25 feet in the air. Underneath the object, within the clearing, he saw 3 children looking up at the object. Soon after, the object and the children disappeared. Milford, searching the area, finding no evidence of the object or children, but took photographs of the area before fleeing. We'll come back to the missing children, by the way. Months later, Milford had been promoted to the rank of major and was presented for Project Sign's first official meeting, held at the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. The meeting discussed and analyzed 18 UFO sightings reported between May and September of 1947, including Milford's own. As he investigated other alleged UFO sightings, such as the abduction of Margaret Colson, Carl Rodd, and Alan how's that pronounced? Traherne? Traherne? Traherne?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. In his hometown of Twin Peaks. Oh, little spoiler, I was going to come to that, but yeah, that's the case. His assignment, my notes are kind of all over the place. His assignment concerning these sightings was to effectively debunk them. In 1949, Project Sign was succeeded by Project Grunge, also a real project. Milford's first assignment for Grunge arrived in November when he was dispatched to Pasadena, California to investigate Jack Parsons, a real person, by the way. Milford met with Parsons in the facade of a freelance journalist writing an article for a left-wing magazine to set the record straight about his termination from Jet Propulsion Laboratories. Parsons spoke of his relationship with science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard. I'm sure you guys know that's a real person.
Yes.
And vaguely referring to the working of Babylon, a ritual he and Hubbard worked on with the goal of summoning Zeta Reticulans. During the interview, Milford also noticed that Parson was wearing a jade green ring on his right hand. The interview abruptly ended with Parsons' wife when Parsons' wife came to pick him up. After Milford met with a former colleague of Parsons who took him to the Arroyo Seco canyon where Parson used to test rockets and explore, in quotes, the explosive sciences, of both the literal and metaphorical varieties, close quotes, believing they would open up the gate. The colleague disclosed that Parson would also use the area for thelema, that's Thelma rituals, attempting to summon the goddess Babylon. Inquiring about Parson's rituals in New Mexico, he learned that Parson had been attempting to bring across the moon child, and that the incident occurred the weekend before the Roswell incident in 1947. From his findings, Milford concluded that any association between Parson and the United States military be terminated. On June 15th of 1952, Milford was dispatched to investigate Parsons once more, still in the guise of a journalist. While Parsons discussed his separation from the Church of Thelema, Milford took note of his home, noticing evidence of occult activities, drug use, and work on explosives. He concluded that Parsons was a potential security threat and reaffirmed his position that Parsons not be given back his military security clearance. Parsons died 2 days later in an explosion at his lab. He later joined Project Blue Book and had a renowned reputation for his investigative skills. In 1958, Milford recorded a journal entry in which he recounted correspondence with his White House informant, M. That's the letter M, who informed him of the secretive wise men. In this entry, Milford also mused on an incident from 1955 that M tipped him on, which was rumored to have filmed evidence. He also recounted the truth, according to M, of a secretive trip by President Eisenhower during which he traveled to Holloman Air Force Base. Sources claimed that Eisenhower's alleged visit to the base was to meet with extraterrestrials who made an offer involving the U.S. giving up nuclear warheads. A second visit was said to involve Greys, who offered their technology in exchange for genetic material, an offer that was purportedly accepted. In 1962, he wrote an editorial against his brother, who was running for mayor of Twin Peaks. However, Dwayne won the position, and as he was running unopposed. In 1966, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel and began working under President Richard M. Nixon, who possibly was his informant M. He secretly continued Project Blue Book for Nixon by gathering allies for 4 years, keeping it secret from other agencies such as the CIA, who refused to convey information to the president's office. Nixon eventually showed him a facility with many UFO-related objects and even the survivor of the UFO crash, which occurred in 1958. In February of 1969, Milford and Professor J. Allen Hynek met with Nixon at the White House to discuss the findings of the Corridon Commission, which recommended against further government-funded UFO research. The three were critical of the Condon report, with Milford deeming its findings and conclusions as contradictory. After Hynek expressed his thoughts, Nixon expressed a slew of personal attacks against Edward Condon and asked to speak with Milford alone. Fearing that the Condon report would indeed lead to the closure of Project Blue Book, Nixon asked Milford to organize an interagency task force to continue UFO research in secret and to learn what the wise men had discovered. Nixon asked Milford what he believed the nature of UFOs to be. Milford answered with his belief that they may not all be extraterrestrial, but rather extra-dimensional beings, and that they had been present for much longer than originally believed. After the meeting, Milford joined Hynek outside, stating that he and the president merely talked about fishing. So now we need to back up again to 1946 and talk about the editor of a pulp magazine called Amazing Stories. In 1946, Ray Palmer gained his most significant readership with the series he dubbed The Shaver Mystery. A series of articles by Richard Sharp Shaver, who claimed to have secret knowledge of a race of beings he referred to as the Lemurians. Again, there's a whole video on the Y-Files about the Lemurians. Later, Palmer published a letter from Fred Chrisman, who claimed that during his service in World War II, he encountered a supposed Lemurian in Burma. Chrisman and Palmer soon formed a friendship, and the following year, Chrisman informed Palmer of the Maury Island incident, a supposed USO sighting by Harold Dahl, who recovered fragments dropped by the flying object. Chrisman mailed Palmer some of the fragments. Palmer then proposed they meet with Kenneth Arnold, another UFO witness. Palmer offered Arnold $200 to investigate the Maury Island incident and to write an article for Amazing Stories. Soon after, Palmer claimed that he was visited by an intelligence agent who questioned him about the Maury Island incident and Shaver's articles. During the agent's visit, Palmer showed him the fragments before locking them inside a filing cabinet. The following morning, Palmer's office had been ransacked, the fragments among the missing items. I would encourage you to look into these things. You'd be surprised how much of that is actually real. This has nothing to do with Twin Peaks, but I had to include this.
Actually real?
A lot of it actually was, yes.
Oh,
In
no.
1961, DC Comics honored Palmer by making his name the alter ego of the superhero, the Atom, which is where I know the name Ray Palmer from. Now, I'm going to gloss over what amounts to a deep dive into real-world UFO conspiracies. I've kind of already covered way too much of it. Obviously, this all relates to Project Blue Book, but the secret history narrative about Dahl and Arnold culminate in one of the first references to the Men in Black. And Tamara points out, as I mentioned earlier, that this MIB might have been Douglas Milford. But I'd encourage enthusiasts to look into the real-world conspiracy theory material related to Dahl, Arnold, Fred Chrisman, and, of course, Project Sign and Project Blue Book. One note on the topic that the archivists make is that an alternate theory about UFOs, metal fragments, and such might have to do with the government covering up advanced aircrafts resulting from Project Paperclip, and that the whole Roswell incident might have been a crash by one of those Skunk Works crafts, possibly carrying nuclear waste from the Manhattan Project to a secret storage facility on former Nez Perce lands. Also, in relationship to Project Paperclip, the archivist mentions that some former German engineers escaped to Argentina, possibly a connection to Jeffries' later investigations. This is my speculation, not the archivist's or Tamara Preston's. The dossier then goes into a discussion on sightings and disappearances around Twin Peaks. At or around dusk on September 4th, 1947, Einar Jennings, the father of Emil Jennings and grandfather of Hank Jennings, was out walking his dog along the hiking trail near Sparkwood and Highway 21 when he spotted a strange silvery object in the sky being chased by an Air Force fighter for about 30 seconds before the object quickly flew straight upward and disappeared into the clouds, and the fighter jet withdrew to the south. towards the nearby Fairchild Air Force Base. Shortly thereafter, Jennings relayed his experience to Robert Jacoby, a local reporter for the Twin Peaks Gazette. Though Jacoby questioned the trustworthiness of the story during the interview, pointing out Jennings' reputation as a drunk, Jennings swore on his mother's life that he was completely sober at the time he had witnessed the event. The story of Jennings' encounter was then published in the newspaper on September 6th. Jennings was shortly thereafter contacted by Douglas Milford, who arranged a meeting with him on September 7th at a local bar to discuss his unusual experience. Unbeknownst to Jennings, who only knew Milford as an old friend of his son, Emil, Milford was in reality a secret agent acting on behalf of the U.S. government, and his true agenda was to make him keep quiet about the experience. After questioning Jennings about the details of the experience, Milford, expressing friendly concern, cautioned Jennings about what had happened to the other people who had publicly shared stories about their sightings of the UFOs, namely that they had been shadowed by and threatened by mysterious visitors, and that attempts had even been made on their lives. When Jennings turned pale and quiet after hearing this, Milford took it as a sign that he had accomplished his mission. The archivist declares that this incident is a reference to the so-called Gorman dogfight listed in Project Sign as Incident 17. I believe this is a fictionalized version of a real-world incident that occurred on the 1st of October, 1948, in the skies over Fargo, North Dakota. Also, as an aside, based on the description from Sparkwood and 21, there's no way with the tree cover he would have been able to see the things he said he saw. I kind of mapped it out. Just saying. Anyway, a Gazette staff writer named Robert Jacoby, Lawrence's brother, wrote an article published 12 September 1947. 3 elementary school children, 2 boys and a girl, went missing for 3 days near Pearl Lakes. While not named in the article, the archivist believes the girl to have been Margaret Colson, and of course I did mention who the other 2 were earlier. And there you go. That gets us not quite halfway through the book, but my gosh, that's a lot of material right there. I want to take a break. I want to give you guys a chance to comment.
I want to address that comment Geek Flag made about Flappy.
Okay.
Thought he had seen just some shrooms. He was not aware he was taking shrooms at the time. They were given to him in a tea by some hippie chick. Okay, he thought it was a tea.
These things do happen.
I'm just saying, everyone picks on Flappy, thinking, he was just trying to commune with nature on that day. He was looking for his spirit animal, which oddly enough turned out to be another thrush. But anyway. Okay, not that funny. All right, anyway, moving on.
I do want to say hello to a few people who've joined us into the chat. The Soulcraft, who I'm seeing for the first time. Welcome. Hope you're enjoying the show. Space Fraggle is with us. Hello, Fraggle.
Good to see you.
And thank you to... Yes, good to see you. And welcome to... and thank you, Nate, for the $2 super chat. Hello. Thank you.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. So I did mention the Church of Thelema or Thelema. I'm not entirely certain how that's pronounced. That's a whole deep dive in and of itself. That's the Church of Aleister Crowley. That's going to come up a lot more in part 2.
That's been in the news. Have you heard of that?
I've done a lot of research on it, yes, but I hadn't heard it recently. Okay. No. What's going on recently with it?
They're restoring it.
Interesting.
They're restoring his, I guess his church or whatever over in England. I heard.
This is the kind of thing that I was getting at when I was talking about how, as I'm reading this, and this was what year was this that this came out? This was 2016. This was still a number of years before the virus of unknown origin, and all of the stuff that happened in relationship to that. But there's been a lot in the news. I didn't know about the restoration of the Church of Thelema, but been a lot of the Bohemian Grove talk, and the secret societies, and former presidents involved in let's say ritualistic activities and all kinds of things. And I'm reading this, and I'm reading about the Freemasons, and I'm reading about the Illuminati, and the Illuminati being involved in a unified world government, under their auspices, and the Freemasons being a bunch of libertarians fighting against it and everything. And I'm like, this is just too real world for me. I mean, I used to be able to take these conspiracy theories and just go, well, this is interesting reading. This is all very, it fits in with all the Lovecraft and all that kind of stuff. But then I'm like, I don't know. There's way too much out there, right? And you start hearing about, what happens at Bohemian Grove and all this other kind of stuff. And it's easy to just say, well, this is a rich white guy's club, where they just do weird stuff and have orgies and stuff. But I don't know, man. I mean, I just don't know. There's just, truth is stranger than fiction, they say, right?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, there is some true life history that ties into this book, and it is. Yeah. And I'm sure there's going to be much more in the latter part. But I tell you, man, this it's not just the secret history of Twin Peaks. It's almost the secret history of the Pacific Northwest at the same time.
Kind of, yeah. There's a lot there. On the one hand, I'm tempted to say, okay, well, they're getting too much into this Native American stuff. He's got an agenda here. But then I also realize, they touched on a lot of Native American beliefs and stuff and wove that into the lore of Twin Peaks. And I don't even think they did enough of it. I think that this does a service to the lore by digging into it a little bit more than we got in the TV show. There is a temptation to say, well, we know that as of the filming of season 3, and this came out before season 3, David Lynch had not read this book, so he didn't really know what was in it. One could argue that most of this is from, I mean, obviously it's the byline is Mark Frost. How much he drew from, what was filmed in and written in Twin Peaks already, how much he got by talking to David behind the scenes, we don't know. Again, a lot of these straightforward narrative elements do tend to come from Mark Frost. The real trippy-dippy type stuff does tend to come from Lynch. And I do feel that I was going to say that I do feel that Frost is the one that weaves the two together in a more or less seamless way. But I think David Lynch does too. I think he has he's a general idea guy. He knows about esoteric stuff. He knows about history, and he draws on those things as he weaves his mythology. But maybe some of the nitty gritty details he leaves to Frost. I'm thinking. But yes, and thank you so much for what you said, JPRPH. When he said that was wonderful. Thanks for the effort, Troy. Yeah, I put a lot of effort into it. Like I said, the nightmare of trying to listen to this on the trip down to Orlando, where that just didn't work. And then I'm listening to it again this past week, and I'm finding it to be a lot like the show and the movie and whatnot. The more you revisit it, the more you get out of it, and then something will jog your memory about something else. Like I said, that Argentina thing with Project Paperclip, I'm like, it can't be a coincidence that they would bring that up. Yes, we know that some of the escaping German National Socialists went to Argentina, and because of Project Paperclip, we know a lot of their engineers came to the United States. But to point that out in the book, I don't think was. And Nate says he hopes you're feeling better, Netter.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, so I can't help but think that there's got to be something there. The references to trying to call up the goddess of Babylon and using explosives and rituals to do it, that very clearly ties into the nuclear testing that we see in season 3 and the release of Jiao Day. So I think that one's pretty obvious. That would have been a spoiler if we hadn't already seen season 3.
What about these children that were witnessed?
Right. So one was Margaret Coulson, right? The log lady. The other was what's his name? Give me a second. Carl Rod. You remember him from the what's it called? The trailer park?
Yeah.
Harry Dean Stanton, right. He mentions in Fire Walk with Me, he said, I've been places. I prefer to just stay around.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always speculated that at some point he, had a disappearance. He went someplace, just like we saw Garland Briggs do, just like we've seen Dale Cooper do, Jeffries. Who is that the character Chris Isaac played that disappeared in
Chet Desmond.
Desmond disappeared, right. So we assumed that something similar happened with Carl Rod, and it really does appear that Carl Rod and Margaret Coulson.
Here's my question, though, when it comes to Desmond.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I had always assumed, since he was looking around the trailer of the corrupt deputy, Cliff, who is eventually killed by Bobby. Spoiler alert.
Right.
I always assumed that Cliff got the drop on him. But what is he reaching for? The Jade Ring.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to wonder, maybe Cliff didn't kill him. Maybe he just went off someplace else, to some other place, some other time.
That does seem to be the implication, though we never get a resolution on that. There's nothing in season 3 about it.
No.
And of course, Fire Walk with Me was released after season 2, so where would we see anything else about Chet? Secret History of Twin Peaks mentions the ring a number of times. Meriwether Lewis, for example, obtains the ring at one point. He carries it around in a leather pouch, and when he's found dead, whether by murder or suicide, that pouch is missing. The pouch is later found, and the ring missing. And the would-be assassin, or the presumed assassin, is never seen again. The ring obviously is, and we know this. If we didn't know it from Fire Walk with Me, we definitely get clarity on it in season 3. Putting the ring on, among other things, is a way of moving between realms. So, for example, Doppel Cooper has the ring put on. I forget his name. What's his name? After he's shot, or it tells him to put it on, and then shoots him, and the body is teleported to the either the waiting room or the Black Lodge. I've never been clear, what the designation is. I've gone back and forth between the Red Room being the threshold, the waiting room, as it's called.
Yeah.
When they talk about the lurker on the threshold, so it not actually being either the White Lodge or the Black Lodge, it's somewhere in between. But it also does come off very Black Lodge-ish, so I'm not really clear on that. And who do you see almost exclusively in the Red Room? You see doppelgangers, and you see lodge denizens. You never see like the firemen in there. You never see Senor Drool Cup. You never see the people we associate with the White Lodge in there. So I'm not entirely certain.
It's an interesting name.
The Senor Drool Cup?
Yes.
Yes. Well, that was, what's his name?
That was Albert's name for him.
Yeah, Albert, right. But, so yeah. That's a bit of a deep... Did I end up going beyond where you had listened to...
Yes. Yes, you had.
Okay. Well,
that's fine.
It's probably fine, because this gives you an opportunity to pay close attention to certain details as you're looking into them. And I do apologize. I know my notes kind of went all over the place. I'd make a note about something, and then I'd go back, and then I'd come back to that point. I was doing the best I could, because the dossier actually does kind of jump around a bit too, and goes back over elements that were mentioned earlier and so forth. But what is kind of neat is we are seeing, and again, it's not a big part of the narrative. The bigger part of the narrative is a lot of real world stuff, but the history of the families of Twin Peaks and the relationships between them. Next week, for sure, I'll get into more of Dr. Jacoby and his brother, the writer. Some very interesting stuff there. Again, I did mention how, as you go through the book, I'm looking at it right now, you'll notice that there is a lot of red writing and red elements. I mean, most of the pictures are black and white, but there are red and blue tintings that if you wear a pair of 3D glasses and use one eye and then use the other, you see two different things. Now, on the audio CD, the last disc has a PDF file with those pictures.
Very cool.
To look at as well. But some of them are different. Some of them are different in the audio version than they are in the printed version, and there may actually be some clues and meaning within those differences as well. I'll leave that up to you guys as you do your own investigation.
Okay.
And Geek Flag with Nate Knows says, who here has had an unexplained experience?
I've definitely had a couple. One actually happened around Halloween, and I was very young. Trick-or-treating in a neighborhood I didn't ordinarily know. My parents took me. My mom took me. And bunch of kids, bunch of parents. And this could have just been overactive imagination on my part. I swear, I looked up and I saw a witch on a broomstick. I'm not kidding. That's what it looked like.
Wow.
To this day, I am
was she cackling?
No.
Okay.
It was like this 20-something, girl, red hair.
Oh, okay.
But dressed in the way that you always see like a witch in a cartoon or something. The pointy hat, the black cloak, everything. I probably
Was she pretty?
Yes, actually.
It was just a glamour. She was really just a hag.
Maybe, but I am to this day convinced I saw that. Now, the other one is a little kind of weirder in a way, because it wasn't just me. I had a teacher in school whose father was dying. So, of course, she left to go to see him. And one day I'm sitting in class, we're all there. I just had this bad feeling, something was wrong. And I'm not somebody who is given to passing notes around in class, but I did that day. I wrote a note. Do you feel like something is wrong? And that note went all the way around the room. And everybody, yes, 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 all the way down the page. We found out that around the time I started having that feeling was when that man died.
Wow.
I don't know how I knew it, why I knew it, how any of us knew it, but we did. How do you explain that? I got no explanation for it. Those are my two.
I don't have anything in terms of like cryptids or like extraterrestrial, UFO type things. Although I'll be honest with you, when I was in the Boy Scouts, I really did some serious searching for Bigfoot and stuff like that. And I've always been interested in those kinds of things. I've had some dreams that were disturbing and possibly correlated to things I couldn't have possibly known about, but they were allegorical enough that I could convince myself that they were just coincidences, or that I'm confabulating some of the details. And I don't even want to think about the possible mystical experiences, although Nanette tends to be a little bit more free and open to those kinds of things.
I get visited by spirits regularly.
Yeah. I don't like to think about it.
They're friendly. I just got to keep telling my dad to stop smoking in the house.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm with you on that one. Welcome. And if we didn't say hi to you earlier, Slasher Fred.
Hello, Slasher Fred.
I think that what Twin Peaks is such a very suspenseful show is how during the first season it was a murder mystery because it was focused on the murder of Laura Palmer. That is a big part of the less fanciful and far more dramatic elements of the story, right? Because it's not just about Laura Palmer. It's about how her death, her life and death affected the entire town. And that's just, you can take all the timey-wiminess and all the esoteric stuff and the fantasy elements and whatnot, take all of that out of it. You've got yourself an incredibly dramatic story. I said that when I saw the first episode and Grace, what was her character name? Sarah, yes. When she is on the phone and realizes he hasn't even been told yet. She just knows that Laura's dead, and she starts to scream. It is just so real and so heart-wrenching. I said I was captured right there. I got a chance to tell Grace that directly. I said, you personally are the reason that I continued watching Twin Peaks after the first episode and why I'm here now, meaning at that fest that I met her at. That is absolutely true, Slasher Fred. I think you're absolutely right. I saw a commentary talking about it that it's very difficult to pigeonhole Twin Peaks. It's definitely a drama. It's definitely a mystery. One could argue it's a horror. You could also argue it's a sci-fi and or fantasy. A fever dream. All of these things. And if you were working in a video store, what section would you put it under? I actually was posed that question at the video store I worked at. And I said, well, it's TV. You can just put it in the TV section. But if you want to know the genre, I'd put a copy in each genre and let anyone who's looking in those genres come upon it and pick it up and become interested. That's just my thought.
JP, behave yourself. We will know more on it.
No. Yeah.
And
that was a heck of a fire that started on the logging river. But okay. I myself have had many unexplained experiences. I mean, I grew up,
in a haunted house. That's what he meant.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that's a bit of a typo there.
Hey. Ned is could be your guest.
Nate is asking if maybe he could be a guest on Thursday Things come Halloween time to talk about some of his experiences.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
You want to DM me on Twitter? We can hash it out. I can get you on my calendar.
Absolutely. But and as a side note, I did mention Robert Jacoby, who is Lawrence's brother. The picture of him that appears in the book is actually a young promotional. I don't remember if it was a headshot or a promotional shot of Russ Tamblyn when he was young. So he kind of plays both brothers, I suppose.
Oh, is he supposed to be twins or?
I don't think they're supposed to be twins, but you would expect them to look alike. And when you have a young picture of Russ Tamblyn, it's like, well, who knows exactly what either brother looked like when you get that young, I did also want to make a quick mention of the voice actors. I did, of course, do a send up for Annie Wershing, who played reprised her role of, well, I guess she's reprising her role in the final dossier, but this was she played Tamara Preston in both. Of course, Russ Tamblyn does the voice of Lawrence Jacoby. Kyle MacLachlan plays, this is interesting, he does the voice of both Dale Cooper and Sheriff Harry S. Truman.
Really?
Yes. James Morrison does the voice of Major Garland Briggs, and he does it very well.
Yeah,
I could close my eyes and almost imagine that it was the original actor. That was pretty interesting.
If you want to recast in your head, obviously I don't want to recast any of the actors, he would have made a really good Major Briggs.
Yeah, absolutely.
He would have.
A voice actor by the name of Robert Knepper was Captain Charles Erskine Wood, Douglas Milford, and a really good Jackie Gleason. I kid you not. You'll get to that later on, I think.
Yeah.
David Patrick Kelly did Gordon Cole. He did an excellent job as Gordon Cole. He also did the voice of Meriwether Lewis, Major James Neely, Colonel Nelson Miles, Kenneth Arnold, and Paul Lance. And every voice was distinct. I mean, who knows what, Meriwether Lewis sounded like. He had a lot of liberty with that, but boy, there was no mistaking that was a different character than Gordon Cole. Of course, Michael Horse does Tommy Hawk Hill, but he also plays Chief Joseph, the historical native character. Matt Hostler does the voice of Andrew Packard. Mark Frost is Dan Hayward, Dr. Will Hayward, and Cyril Pons. Ari, I hope I don't ruin this, Fliakos did the voice of Robert Jacoby. So the voice of Robert and Lawrence were two distinct voice actors, even though Russ Tamblyn did, used a picture of himself for Robert. Len Cariou was President Thomas Jefferson, Lieutenant Dan Lerman, Dr. Will Hayward, and Richard Nixon. And Arthur Bishop as a Wisconsin journalist, Wayne Chance, Pendleton East Organian, Edward R. Murrow, Fred Chrisman, Ezekiel, and Jack Parsons. Again, a lot of real world characters that it might not hurt you to maybe even just check out the Wikipedia entries on some of these people, just to kind of orient your mind in the real world history. Feel free to dig farther if you want to, but some really, really good stuff.
Cool.
And we still have half a book to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Half a book.
Yeah, there's quite a bit.
Yeah, I can see where his bookmark is, and he's got a lot left to go through.
Do you have little you have highlights in the book or little tab things poking out?
No, I don't like to write in books. I do completely separate notebook, and I'm filling up a notebook with all of my. I mean, there's also discrepancies that we could go through. Some of them are insignificant. Some of them I think are intentional. Like, for example, according to the secret diary of Laura Palmer, the log lady's husband died by, and I'm getting ahead of myself here. This is from later in the book. We'll cover this either next week or if we go 3, the week after. The log lady's husband died by having fallen face first into hot coals and burning to death. The Secret History of Twin Peaks states that Sam Lanterman fell into a burning ravine during a fire. But since the article in the Secret History of Twin Peaks does not actually declare Sam's cause of death, it is possible that when Sam fell into the burning ravine, he fell into hot coals and was burned to death. So that may not actually be a discrepancy. In the Secret History of Twin Peaks, Jacoby states that Laura began seeing him 6 months before her death, when the Secret Diary of Laura Palmer states that she began seeing him over a year prior. Again, I'm not entirely certain that constitutes a real discrepancy. It could just be the difference between how the two people remember it. I would be more inclined to believe Laura's account of it, specifically because she's writing in a diary on a day-by-day basis. I also think that Jacoby has reason to obscure some of his history with Laura. So, I'd keep that in mind. I mentioned before, although we didn't dig into it because I knew we'd be getting into this book, which covers a lot meatier elements, the Access Guide to Twin Peaks. So some of these are really nitpicky, but you know how I am. In the Access Guide to Twin Peaks, the football team photo seems to show enough players for a regular 11-player team, but in Secret History, the plaque and depiction shows a 7-player squad. Again, there's plausible reasons for why that could be the case. The guide states that Coach Bobo Hobson was never caught on camera, fearing that it would take his soul. But the dossier has a picture of him in the Twin Peaks Gazette, in a Twin Peaks Gazette article. Again, I could see that being an account in the real world, not measuring up with something I've seen. I don't know. People say things and then do other things. In the Access Guide, Harry's team number is number 10, Ed's is number 60, Hank's is number 81, and Stan Lealis is number 80, but in the dossier, Hank is 45, Ed is 65, and Hank is 60. The Access Guide states the Martells arrived in Twin Peaks after the Packards, but the Secret History states the opposite. The guide is produced by Richard Saul Werman, who is a good friend of Andrew Packard. Thus, he may have written it this way to favor his friend's family. Yeah, that's how pedantic some of this gets. In the Secret History, Pete's father is named Ursel, whose father is named Zebulon, but in the Access Guide, Pete's father's name is Neelith, whose father's name is Rudolph. In the Access Guide, yeah, I know. In the Access Guide, Peter's father is the one who sells the Martell mill to the Packards 1 week before dying of indigestion. In Secret History, it's Pete's grandfather selling to Andrew's father on his deathbed. Again, these kinds of things, I'm like, we have real history that has these kinds of discrepancies, depending on where you're reading it. So I am not really seeing big problems with these kinds of details. In the Access Guide, Andrew and Catherine's father is named Ezekiel. In the Secret History, his name is Thomas. In the Access Guide, Harry is stated to be the son of a mill worker named Boyd Truman. In the Secret History, it is said that he is the son of Sheriff Frederick Truman. In the Access Guide, Hank is said to be the son of a Zuni shaman. In Secret History, he is stated to be full-blood Nez Perce son of a mill worker. And I'm not entirely certain those things are mutually exclusive. I could totally see a Nez Perce mill worker being a Zuni shaman. It is possible. In the Access Guide, Frank and Jerry are not seen in the roster of the Twin Peaks High School Steeplejacks football team in 1968, and the student manager is Herb Frederick instead of Ben. In the Axis Guide in 1968, Steeplejacks never lost a game, including the last one against the Kettle Falls Cougars. In the Secret History in 1968, Lumberjacks lost in their final game, which was against the Kettle Falls Cougars. I think that is misinformation, either by the Steeplejacks or the Cougars. I'm not sure which. And that's just a small list. And welcome, the Bosco Scenario. Thank you so much for stopping in.
Artist is with us as well.
And the Soulcraft. Knights of the Golden Circle, yes. See, there's somebody who knows his well, let's just call it his lore.
Lore?
Yeah.
Like Dada's brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would say that there's a number of reasons for discrepancies. One could just be mistakes in the research by Mark Frost. Others could be, like I said, very intentional. They don't matter, just like in the real world. There's discrepancies and uncertainties about historic figures and history and the course of events. But there is a third possibility, and that is that some of these are intentional errors, in quotes, to reflect changes in history because of the timey-wiminess of the story, right? We know, for example, that Dale goes back in time to try to rescue Laura, and in so doing, she becomes a missing person rather than a murder victim. We have no idea how many events in history have been changed because of the denizens of Twin Peaks and the surrounding environs traveling around through time, some of which we see in the show, some of which we don't, but is definitely implied, right? It is... I am more certain than not that Agent Jeffries has been doing a lot of time traveling. I would say that his teapot is actually a TARDIS, and he's probably a Gallifreyan at this point.
Huh.
That's just my headcanon. Yeah, and yeah, Nate is actually bringing up that idea that maybe two articles are from two different times. That is a possibility. The problem is there's no way to be certain. Even if that is the intent on some of these, others might not be, and it's kind of hard to know which ones are which. So I don't know if anyone has ever read or ever heard of a series of 3 books in the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson. The 3 books were The Eye in the Pyramid, The Golden Apple, and Leviathan. These are every bit as trippy as this. I have to believe that some of Lynch's writings and whatnot had to have been inspired by this. I think most Lovecraft enthusiasts and most conspiracy enthusiasts have read this trilogy. And what's interesting about these books is that it is said that some of the story is fictional, some of it is real, and some of it is purposeful misdirection. And it's very difficult to tell which is which. And I do feel like that element is here in the Secret History of Twin Peaks. I would almost argue, if you are getting ready to do a deep dive into conspiracy theories and whatnot, you might want to try out this Illuminatus trilogy. And if you like it, bless you, stick with it. If you can't finish it and you go, this is just too trippy for me, then just walk away. It's some pretty weird stuff.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think this is as good a place as any to wrap it up for the week. Please go out and find your own copy of the Secret Diary of Twin Peaks. Secret Diary, sorry, kind of Secret History of Twin Peaks. And
right.
and it's an interesting read. So please check it out. Let's go around the horn. Troy, you and Netter have a show coming up, do you not?
Right after this, we will be looking at the very next episode of Twin Peaks. It's
Twin Peaks. You mean Blake 7?
Twin Peaks. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm all discombobulated. Season 2. The next episode of season 2 of Blake 7. The episode is Pressure Point. And I'm doing everything I can not to say too much about it, because I really don't want to spoil this episode for anyone if you haven't seen it. This is a keystone episode. So if you're on my channel, just stay with me after this, and you'll be auto-dramatically teleported over there.
Anything else coming up?
Yeah, mine, same thing.
Oh,
You'll be automatically
exactly.
shunted over.
And Friday Night Last Call this week, Troy?
Yes, this week special guest will be Sir Torrin Clegane. We will be talking about the soap operas we grew up with. We will be honoring some of the stars of those shows that are no longer with us, and each one of us has chosen our favorite character to talk about as well. So that'll be this Friday. And if soap operas aren't your thing, come by anyway and have an adult beverage handy.
Okay. Netter.
Well, let's see. After this, I will be with Troy on his channel for another exciting episode of Blake 7. Thursday, I don't have a guest, so it's just going to be me and Troy.
Wait, I'm the guest.
Oh, right. I forgot. We do have a guest. I got to make sure I put you on my... There you go. Okay. My special guest will be H. Boomer.
There you go.
And we're going to be talking about meeting him live in person. I'm going to give you a spoiler. He doesn't really drive a tractor. Let's see. And then Friday, of course, I'll be hosting on Last Call. Saturday, we will be having a rewatch of the movie Firefox. So that's exciting. And I guess that's it for me.
Nice. All right, Boomer.
Like Netter said, be on their Thursday, special guest Thursday things, be on Last Call with Troy Pacelli and Torrin Clegane. And then Sunday, Geeky Geezers, we'll be talking about a probable exit of a certain head of a major Hollywood studio that everyone is talking about. Plus, a television adaptation of my favorite horror movie is apparently in the works. So I will be talking about that for good old days. And also, another rumor that Tony Hawk might be returning to video games again. That's also floating around. So yeah. That's it.
All righty. Gets on back around to me. Thursday, if all goes as planned, I'll be joining Outlaw Bill for Action Theater. This week's movie will be Hard Rain from 1998. Morgan Freeman, Christian Slater, Minnie Driver, and Randy Quaid. So check that out. Of course, later on that night will be coming attractions, and we find out what I'm going to be up to for the next week, including my next appearance on Films with Friends. So I'll be joining Big Al Presents this Friday at 8 o'clock. And this week's movie is The Black Hole from 1979. Unscripted will return. It'll be episode 100. And I'm thinking I might do a post-Oscars autopsy show. So stay tuned and find out what's coming up next. All right. I do, of course, want to thank everybody who's following along on X. I can't see you, but I know that you're there. Thank everybody who is here with us in the chat. Thank you for the super chats, Nate, as well as, of course, JPRPH1, Connie Cleary, Curtis Selby. Let's see. Basca Scenario, Slasher Fred, DJ Plain Ice, Space Fraggle, Soulcraft, Mel NYC Reviews, and let's see. Wade, of course, was with us, and of course Tim, FKHC 2005. I think that was everybody. If I missed you, I do apologize. All right. Any last words before we wrap it up?
Nope.
Okay. Netter, would you like to take us out with your closing?
Sure. You all know what I always say. We can talk amongst ourselves. And we do. But it's more fun when you guys are joining us in the chat. And you're dropping the comments, questions, trivia, being goofy, whatever it may be. And it doesn't feel like we're separated by miles or continents in some cases. It just feels like we're all hanging out in our family room. We're passing the popcorn and having a great time. And you guys, you know you're not just our friends. You're family. So deal with it. I mean, we really do love you guys, and we appreciate you so very much. And you can be anywhere, and you're here. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the many ways that you support us and our channels. You guys are Osmo. I say this all the time, that we don't do this for us. We do this for you. And I'm so very happy and grateful that y'all keep coming back, because we must be doing something right. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for encouraging us. And until next time, which will be shortly, if you stay right here, you'll be redirected to Troy's channel for Blake 7. Good night and God bless.
And once again, thank everybody for joining us here, both watching live and on the replay. Please subscribe to my fellow panelists. If you are already subscribed, please make sure that you are, because YouTube likes to unsubscribe you without your permission. So please check that. Stay until the end of the show. If you're on my channel, you will be redirected to Troy's channel for Blake 7. From HQ, and all points north, south, east, west, and beyond. Good night. Take care. Stay strong. Be safe and healthy. Be careful if you find any jade rings in the forest, because this is how we win.